Well, here we are at camp, and let me start out the sermon today by asking a question. To everybody, really, do you like to be alone? Well, maybe from time to time. I know I like to have alone time from time to time. Everybody maybe likes a little bit alone time. You know, men maybe over women. Sometimes men like to go into the quote-unquote cave, okay, that they call it, right? Of course, we know we didn't come from cavemen, but men like to go into their cave and do their thing. But not forever, right? Not forever. No one really likes to be totally alone all the time. You know, people have been studying this for decades. I'm sure it was probably some lady who started this, like, why is my husband gone all the time? He's in that cave. I got to study this. I got to figure this out. Because it can't just be him. Or is it just him, you know? But people have been studying this for a long time. Now, one famous individual, this fellow's name is Robin Dunbar, you may have heard of him, came up with a number for how many friends the average human being can handle. So apparently there's some number that's the most you can handle. Okay, this is an average. And that the man doesn't share our beliefs, obviously, but his number... he's an evolutionist, but his number was 150. So maybe a little bit more than the people that are in this room, similar. However, after further studying, he found that the estimated number, he hypothesized, was actually backed up with data. Okay? So I guess even this evolutionist, even a blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while, right? So 150 friends. Defined as, you know, people you might socialize with. 50 casual friends. A group, you know, think about it as a group of people you might have over to your home on occasion. 15 closer friends. So of the 150, about 10%. 15 closer friends. So those whom you would tell most important things to. And then of the 150, about 5. 5 best friends, those whom you share the most intimate portions of your life with. So the deepest, darkest places in your life, the happiest, most joyous things, the trials. 5 best friends. You know, to put it simply, becoming someone's friend involves recognizing a similarity and a familiarity with some people. A person who shares your likes, your dislikes, your interests, your goals. Somebody that you enjoy spending time with. Somebody you enjoy spending time with. There was a book written by a lady called Friendfluence. Kind of like influence, but friend. And it says, friends play a role in determining our sense of self and the direction of our life. Friends sharpen our mind, making us generally happier, inspire us to reach our goals. They help us to live longer and a healthier life. So the more friends people have, or the stronger the friendships people have, people tend to live longer and have a happier life. Early friendships play a vital role because they occur while key developmental changes are taking place. So, preteens in the room, this is for you. Teens in the room, this is for you. Those who are not teens in the room, this is for us as well. They help teach us some of the important life skills, but also shape our life narrative. So the story of our life, in other words. Friends steer your priorities. They steer your thoughts and your behavior. Now, we did hear a little bit about friends earlier today, but we're going to take this in a different direction. You know, as a society, we're actually becoming less social. You think, what? How is that possible? We got social media, this, that, and the other thing, right? Social this, social that. There's all these TikTok, there's, you know, Snapchat, there's Instagram, there's all the stuff. There's other ones, right? We even had to sign up for one when we got here. just to stay in touch. There was an article in late or early 2025, and it was titled "The Friendship Recession: The Lost Art of Connecting." Nearly 40% of Americans now have online-only friendships. Think about that. 2 in 5 people only online. Among teenagers, so those of you sitting in the first few rows, the trend is even more pronounced. Teenagers are spending only 40 minutes a day in person, on average, with their friends outside of school hours. And that's even more difficult for those that aren't in public school, that don't see their friends regularly. That's down from 140 minutes a day nearly 2 decades ago. So just think, in the early 2000s, teenagers, people your age, okay, that's 20 years ago, they're not your age anymore, but they were spending 2.5 times, a little over, 3.5 times what your generation is spending with people today. On the other hand, teens are spending increasing amounts of time on devices. The average teen spent almost 9 hours a day on screen time in 2021, and that's up from 2015. And the numbers are about the same today, within 20 minutes or so. This cultural shift would not matter if digital friendships were interchangeable with in-person friendships. Okay, they're not quite the same, but online friendships require a different set of social behaviors than in-person ones. Maintaining a friendship online relies on skills like crafting the perfect message, interpreting text-based interactions. We all know that. Those of us who are older try to figure out what you're saying all the time when you text us. We have no idea what these little, 2-letter things mean, or these 3-letter things mean. Sometimes they're 4 letters. They're not bad 4 letters, hopefully. Sometimes we don't even know. Okay, you engage in asynchronous exchanges with multiple people at the same time. That's the way online friendships are made and maintained. In contrast to in-person friendships, those that are face-to-face, kind of like the ones you're having here during this camp experience, they thrive on undivided attention and are built through spontaneous moments, reading body language, navigating the vulnerability of face-to-face connection. Some even suggest that young people growing up immersed in digital interactions are losing the opportunity to develop the in-person social skills that once defined deep human connection. That's a pretty profound article for what social media and what the digital world is doing to humanity. And I think it's shaping what's going on in society. And I think God knew that this was going to be the case, or something along these lines was going to be the case, because He knew the way human interactions would be. And we all know, we could turn to Timothy and we could look and see what conditions at the end of the age would look like. If you look at it on its face, those of us who don't have all of our friendships like that, who are in a different generation, we look at this as it's a little sad. Now, we're not trying to look down on any teenagers or anything like that. It is yet another attempt where man, through his genius, has attempted to enhance something, but it's having the opposite effect. There are Gallup polls that show since 1990, on average, we have less friends. The number has been steadily dwindling. So despite what we think is happening online, the reality is people are getting and having less friendships. Through trying to gain a stronger ties and friendships, we are actually quickly deteriorating and destroying them. So today, what I want to talk about, and where I want to take this message, is I want to talk about developing and maintaining friendships, because it's important to all of us, and we're going to see how God wants us to build and to maintain our friendships. Okay, so without turning to a scripture, I think we're all familiar with this. In the New Testament, in the Greek, the word for friend is philos, okay, which means dear, friend, somebody you're fond of, somebody you're friendly with. And I think we're all aware that the term philos is associated with Philadelphia, right? Most people in the United States know Philadelphia. They say it's the city of brotherly love, right? Why is it the city of brotherly love? Because Philadelphia means fraternal affection, or brotherly kindness, brotherly love, the love of the brethren, fondness, friendship, a brother. A Philadelphian can also be broken down to mean dear brother, or fond brother, or friend brother. So, what is the basis for true friendship? Okay, we're going to go through 7 points through the remainder of the message today. I'm going to cover 7 points. The first and the most important point: friendship with God. It's got to start with the correct foundation. Now, we heard this verse the other day, but there's no harm in repetition in the Christian living, so let's turn to John 15. We'll start there in the Bible. Great place to start. Get the foundation right, and the rest kind of starts to take care of itself. John 15, and in verse 13. Here's the foundation for friendships. Friendships with God, to begin. Greater love has no man than this, verse 13, that a man lay down his life for his friends. Christ said, you, plural, you are my friends, if you do whatsoever I command you. Here's the condition. Henceforth I call you not servants, for the servant knows not what his Lord does, but I have called you friends. For all things that I have heard of my Father, I have made known unto you. Christ didn't hold back anything. Anything that he was given, he wanted to share. He wanted to share so that they could learn, so they could do, so they could truly develop a relationship with him and with his Father, similar to the relationship that he had with his Father. That's what he wants for us. In Psalm 119, 172, Christ said, remember, do everything I command you. This is what the condition for friendship is. In Psalm 119, 172, it says, all your commands are righteousness. So those that are doing what God says are both righteous and considered his friends. So let's look at 2 quick examples, because we have biblical examples there. God called somebody his friend. Isaiah 41. Turn there. Turn to the book of Isaiah, chapter 41. Here's 2 examples of people that started and had the right foundation. Isaiah 41, verse 8 says, but you, Israel, are my servant, Jacob, whom I have chosen, the seed of Abraham, my friend. You know, that's later confirmed in James 2. Don't have to turn there, but the New Testament records it as well. Abraham, God, or Christ, the one who would become Christ, calls Abraham his friend. Exodus 33. Turn there. Exodus 33. You see another example. This is just after golden calf incident. We're all very, very familiar with that. Exodus 33:11. And the Eternal spoke to Moses face to face. Not through text, not through Instagram, not through DMing. As a man speaks unto his friend. God says, friends speak to each other face to face. Now, Moses didn't see pre-incarnate Christ in his full glory. He couldn't do that. That would have killed him. That would kill any human being. However, he spoke to him face to face, as a man speaks to his friend. You know, these men did what God says. God was in direct contact with them as friends. And if we hold dear to what this world offers, if we're fond of this world, if we're thinking the way the world thinks, well, we know what God says about that. It's very different. These men chose righteousness. They chose to do what God says. The world says, hey, if you want to be my friend, that's real easy. God says if you're a friend of the world, you're an enemy with Him. In Romans 8:7, you should turn there. We won't go to James. We don't need to go there. Romans 8:7, this is the way the world thinks. This is another place where God defines it. Romans 8:7, it says, because the carnal mind, the natural mind, our natural human nature, which we all possess, which we all have, is enmity, or the enemy against God. For it is not subject to the law of God, neither indeed can be. So if we're thinking carnally, if we're thinking like the rest of the world, if we're acting in that way, if we're using what comes naturally to us, God says that's the enemy. It cannot keep my law. And by definition, Christ said, hey, do whatever I command you. That's what makes you my friend. But if we're thinking like the way the world does, it's impossible. They don't equal each other. It's mathematically impossible. You can't do it. Christians and those who want to be Christians, those young people who God is working with, you young people, do what God commands us to do. We do what Christ said to do. Then we're counted as friends. You know, God says that you are holy. Your parents are holy, so your children are counted as holy. If He opens up His Word, His understanding, His commandments to you, you have a chance to start your friendship, to get that right foundation. We all do. Those of us who have a spirit, we listen to what God says to do, we become His friends. And Christians have got to come out of the world. We've got to come away from the world. We heard it many times decades ago. Revelation 18:4, come out of her, my people. Come out of her. Talking about Babylon. Don't partake in her sins. Don't partake in her plagues. Don't want to take part of those. Don't receive them. Yes, we live in a world, and that's the really, really difficult thing as a young person. We live in a world, but we cannot become part of it for fear that we get too close to it. Christians and those who would be Christians, we don't get too involved in all the world's clubs, in societies. It's not wrong to be part of a sports team. It's not wrong to be a part of a little this or a little of that. But you got to be careful of worldly clubs, societies, these do-gooder organizations. They steer us in the wrong direction. They're not where God is working. They're not where He wants to work. That's not what He wants to do. This is the devil's world. And if we get too close to it, we start to veer on the side towards being against God. And we don't want to do that. You know, it's a fine balance. We want to be a light to the world. Absolutely. And we can whenever the opportunity arises. But we don't go out to be a part of the world to fix the world, which is what a lot of these organizations do. That can only happen when Jesus Christ returns. That only gets fully solved and fixed when Christ returns. So what do? We want to associate ourselves with other people who want to be the friend of God, right? Two cannot walk together except they be agreed. You know that principle? Proverbs 12. You heard this verse earlier, but it's good. This is something that most people don't do. They don't take the time to really do this. And we got to. And even in the church sometimes, it's a difficulty. You know, we're to prove all things and hold fast to that which is good. Prove all things. Well, that doesn't leave anything out. That's everything. Prove all things. Proverbs 12 and verse 26. In the King James, it says, "The righteous is more excellent than his neighbor, but the way of the wicked seduces them." Well, I think the New King James reads, "The righteous should choose his friends carefully, for the way of the wicked leads them astray." The righteous should choose his friends carefully. And we have to choose our friends really carefully. If you look into the original Hebrew, when it talks about the righteous choosing his friends carefully, it's talking about like reconnaissance. The word is named after the Meander River, which flows in the Middle East. And it goes around. And a meandering river, kind of, you've all seen them on maps. They kind of look like a snake, you know, like the ones we saw at the zoo the other day. Kind of in and out, just going around, searching through the landscape, right? Going back and forth across the entire landscape, checking out all the landscape. That's what a reconnaissance mission is, right? Going in to check out what's there, to look for the dangers, to look to see where the good places are, to look to see where the dangerous places are. Where can we trek? Where can we go? So there's a lot in this verse when God says the righteous should choose his friends carefully. Those that want to do what Christ says, those that want to be Christ's friends, those that want to be God the Father's friends, by doing his commandments, are righteous. Those people, take care. You want to be friendly? Absolutely. Be friendly. You don't want to sit your friend down and say, okay, here we go. I got 3 minutes. We're going to determine whether or not we can be friends. And I'm going to ask you 50 questions, and if you get less than 45, you're out. No, it's not like that, okay? It's not like you have to have an A friend. Well, you're my A friend, you're my B friend, you're my C friend. Okay? You're a D, you didn't pass yet, but I'll give you a retake. You know. Okay, too much school. Never mind. Anyway, but we have to be careful, right? We have to be, and it takes time. And it takes spending time, and it takes circumstances, and it takes spending time together in those circumstances, in different places, with different people, in different times, in different places, just like what we're doing here at camp. You're getting a wonderful opportunity to practice this reconnaissance mission, right, of searching out who your friends can be. Because you're getting all different types of opportunities. You get to eat with people. You sit here at services with people. You go to Christian Living with people. You play sports against people. You play sports with people. You do various activities that aren't necessarily athletic. You hear people speaking. You see people dancing. You see people working with leather and art. You see people water skiing. Right? And then you spend time in the dorms. Right? And you see a lot more than probably any of us know about, or want to know about even. But you're having fun, and you're doing this. You're practicing this reconnaissance mission. You're choosing your friends carefully. Turn to the book of Daniel. We'll look at somebody. I know I'm spending a lot of time on the first point, but you can't spend enough time on the first point talking about how important it is to develop friendships and maintain friendships unless you have the right foundation. It's got to be there. We all need it. It's certainly important for all of us. You know, anybody that's had any heartache in the church, anybody that's been in the church for a while, for decades, there's been lots of breakups. There's been lots of splits. They've happened. They've been happening since the very first century, since the church was established. We want to put ourselves out there. We want to be able to have friends. We want to show ourselves friendly. But we have to maintain and make sure we're keeping our friends using God's criteria. That's the most important. That's the very most important. Daniel 3 and verse 16. Daniel knew how to choose friends. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. You know the story. They answered and said unto the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer you in this matter. If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But if not, be it known unto you, O king, that we will not serve your gods, nor worship the golden image which you have set up. Why? Because we do what God says. We are God's friend. And they were friends with each other. And Daniel chose those people to be his friends as well. Because Daniel was also a friend of God. Because he did what God says. And they were not going to compromise. Not one bit. They weren't prepared to do that at all. That's the foundation. Those are friends. Daniel was a wise young man. He chose his friends who knew what they knew and knew that they knew it. They were resolute. They feared God and waited for deliverance. They knew they were in a dire situation. These are the kind of friends we need to have. This camp, and maybe especially this year over other years, this camp is important and an important place to start and to rekindle and to strengthen and develop those types of friendships among staff, among campers, among preteens, every single one of us. People of character who will not budge on what God says to do, who stand together, whom God himself promises to protect. Okay, the second, I know we're on point 2 here. I better speed up a little bit. But the second one is to choose friends and to maintain friendships. You want to have honest and genuine friends. And you want to be honest and genuine yourself. Showing a genuine interest in somebody else. Turn to the book of 1 Corinthians. Let's go there. This is a good example. 1 Corinthians 12. First Corinthians 12 and verse 26. Talking about the body of Christ. The analogy as one complete, full body. The church. It says, when one member suffers, all the members suffer with it. Or when one member is honored, all the members rejoice with it. Those are two things where people understand and people know if somebody is being honest and genuine with them. We all know that. If we're suffering, we know when somebody just gives us, lip pity, you might call it. Or if we're honored, we know when somebody is just flattering us, right? We all know that. We can all tell that most of the time. You can see it. We've been there. Young people can see it as well. So that's what it means to be honest and genuine. Just show an honest and genuine care and concern when somebody is suffering. To take an interest, to try to help them and ease it. To put yourself in their place. To ask ourselves how we would like to be treated in that situation. Or likewise, let's say somebody has a great success. To truly be happy for them. A genuine smile. Sharing that success with them. One of the least popular or most powerful ways actually we can show how we truly care about somebody is to be honest with them no matter what. Even in difficult or awkward moments. Turn to the book of Galatians. We'll go there. Galatians. As I go through some of these points, try to think about situations you've encountered or situations maybe you will yet encounter. Put yourself in those places. Go back in your mind. Remember how those situations went. I'm sure you will find that you have some true friends, some really good, honest, and genuine friends in situations. And you still do. Galatians 2, and verse 11, we'll pick it up there. A true friend sometimes has things to say that we need to hear, not always what we want to hear. When Peter was come to Antioch, I withstood him, this is the Apostle Paul speaking, I withstood him to the face, because he was to be blamed. For before that certain came from James, he did eat with the Gentiles. So Peter was eating with the Gentiles. But when they were come, he withdrew and separated himself, fearing them which were of the circumcision. So there were Jews that came. And Peter was afraid to be seen eating with the Gentiles. And the other Jews dissembled likewise with him, insomuch that Barnabas also was carried away with their dissimulation. So they separated themselves from each other. But when I saw that they walked not uprightly according to the truth of the gospel, I said unto Peter before them, if you, being a Jew, live after the manner of Gentiles, and not as do the Jews, why do you compel the Gentiles to live as do the Jews? So Paul had to confront Peter, the leading apostle. This is one apostle to another. They were friends. And Paul saw that something wasn't right. There's a bias going on. You're sitting there, and picture this, campers. You're sitting there eating with somebody, and then your friends show up, and then you got to get up, right? Because, I can't be seen eating with that person or this person. I got to get up and go with my friends. A true friend would come over and call you out on it and say, hey, you were just eating with us. What's the big deal? We're all part of the same camp. And that's basically what the Apostle Paul was telling Peter. Hey, we're all part of the same camp. And that was tough. That was tough. He wasn't afraid to go and say what was difficult. He was honest. And he was genuine. Proverbs 27. A couple Proverbs here. We'll look at two, back to back. Proverbs 27 and verse 5 and 6. It says, open rebuke is better than secret love. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. So a true friend will come to you and tell you if they see something wrong that you're doing that's out of the norm, that you're behaving out of the norm, a true friend will come and tell you about it. You know, somebody that wants to flatter you, it says, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. They just want to flatter you. But a true friend will tell you. True brotherly love is sincere, and it's based on doing what's right no matter what. God's people do need these true friendships with one another. The world's confusing and enticing. It can suck us back in at any moment if we're not careful. If we establish sincere friendships, we can help each other. We can do that by not being afraid to deal with tough situations. Don't be afraid to deal with tough situations. People will respect you for it. This open rebuke is better than secret love. Sometimes, I remember, I've been corrected by somebody before, and I realized, you know what, I had a wrong way of thinking. And it turned a way of thinking around, and it helped. It helped. It brings you back down to reality, right? And friends can help you do that. Okay, the third area for maintaining and developing true friendship, God's way, is respect, or mutual respect. Make the other person understand how important they are in your eyes. They'll do the same for you. That's kind of the opposite of the way the world around us works, right? Everybody wants you to know how important they are in your eyes, not how important you are in their eyes. The world is very opposite, right? You look at these people that post on social media. They want you to know how important they are in your eyes because I have 1 million likes and I stood on my head and, I was able to blow a ping pong ball from one nostril to the other, or something like this. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that goes on. I mean, I haven't seen that. Please don't get any ideas. Okay? That's not what the sermon is about, but it's that kind of stupid stuff that happens. And people get 1 million likes for it. Some people get paid for it. And it's their claim to fame, and they want you to know how good they are. You go, wow, that skill's going to come in handy when I need to fix a car. I mean, well, look at me. I can blow a ping pong ball from one nostril to the other. I mean, that's awesome. We live in a really selfish age, the most selfish age in human history. Go to 1 Samuel. We've been there already, but let's go back to 1 Samuel. Haven't been to this verse. In verse 18. Or chapter 18, verse 1. 1 Samuel 18. And verse 1. This is coming off David's awesome victory against Goliath. That's the context. 1 Samuel 18, verse 1. It says, "And it came to pass, when he had made an end of speaking unto Saul, that the soul of Jonathan was knit with the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul," as his own life. "And Saul took him that day, and would not let him go more to the home of his father. And then Jonathan and David made a covenant, because he loved him as much as his own life. And Jonathan stripped himself of the robe that was upon him, and gave it to David, and his garments, even to his sword, and to his bow, and to his girdle." This is Jonathan. And we're talking about respect. Jonathan saw and knew that God was working through David. They made a covenant of friendship. Jonathan, who was the son of Saul, the anointed king of Israel, knew that David was going to be God's man. In fact, David was already God's man at this point. He was just not fully in place. And Jonathan, out of a sign of respect, gave him his jacket and his sword, his coat and his sword, his robe and his sword, as a sign of respect. You're now the next guy. I respect that. I respect what God says. I respect you. You're my friend. He gave him his royal dress, along with the sword and the girdle. Utmost respect. Philippians 2. Let's go to the New Testament. I mean, that's a true act of humility. He could have held on to it as long as he wanted, saying, "I hope someday I'll be king." But he chose the other way to go. Philippians 2. Philippians 2, verses 3 through 4. It says, "Let nothing be done through strife or vainglory, but in lowliness of mind," humility, "let each esteem the other better than themselves." That Old Testament example is Jonathan esteeming David better than himself as a sign of great respect. Not every man on his own things, look not every man on his own things, but every man also on the things of others. Showing individuals respect. If you show somebody respect, if I show somebody respect, if I make the effort to do that first, that person is likely to show respect back. It's a two-way street. Ask somebody about themselves. Talk to them. Find out their interests, what they do. If you do long enough with a real, true, and genuine, honest interest, all these points build on one another. If you do, you'll find out that the person does something that you or I don't do, don't know how to do. And then you will see, wow, I'm not good at that. They're good at that. That's really neat. Can I see you do some of that? Or can you show me what you've produced? Or can you share with me? Or maybe they have already done that. And then you can say, I could never do that. And by doing that, you esteem that other person better than ourselves. And you see in that other person, and you will forever see in that other person that skill that they have that you do not have. And that helps every time in an interaction, especially if you have a difficult interaction. That person is made in the image of God. He's given them a talent. They've been able to do it, and it's something that you or I cannot do. I'm not so great. That person deserves a little respect. And the more of those types of things we can find in one another, the more respect we will have for one another. And that's a foundation. It automatically shows them preference. We lower ourselves. And we show people respect. And that works both ways, because that person will want to know what you do. And they will respect you, and they'll think of you and esteem you for something that you do that they do not. That's really important when it comes to friendship. Having that mutual respect, developing that. Okay, point number 4. Right in the middle here. True friends, maintaining true friendships, there's got to be mercy and there's got to be forgiveness. There's got to be plenty of it. Because guess what? We're all still human beings. We don't want to make mistakes, as we heard in the sermonette. That's not our goal. But from time to time, we are going to make some mistakes. And we're going to do it with those people we're developing friendships with. And sometimes we don't mean to do it. What happens? What happens? Go to Matthew 18. We go there over and over and over again. God knew this. Jesus Christ knew this. He wanted His people to understand it. You're in the flesh. We're human beings. We make mistakes. We're going to have a lot of interactions with one another. I want you to be friends. I don't want you to just be online friends. I want you to be friends face to face, because that's how I'm friends with you. And in doing so, as human beings who don't always do this perfectly, I got to have some way for you to reconcile, to bind you back together. Matthew 18 and in verse 15. Moreover, if your brother shall trespass against you, so somebody offends you, a friend does a mistake and they offend you, go and tell him his fault between you and him alone, and if he hears, you've gained your brother. Most of the time, if somebody who's your friend, who has respect for you, realizes that they violated that respect in some way, it's going to hurt them if you develop that. And they're not going to want that. And they're going to want to change it right away. You just got to let them know in a kind, mutually respectful, nice way. And they'll change. But if you will not hear, then take with you 1 or 2 more, that in the mouth of 2 witnesses every word may be established. Sometimes we get a little bit tough, and we don't want to hear it, and so it takes a couple other people to help us realize. Remember, open rebuke is better than secret love. Maybe 2 friends. You know, of those 5 real deep friendships that you have, maybe 2 people, maybe 3 people. And if ye neglect to hear them, tell it to the church. But if you neglect to hear the church, let it be unto you as a heathen man and a publican. So sometimes people just won't listen, and if they won't hear it, if they won't hear it from the church after all those 2 steps have happened, they're just not willing to hear it. So you got to give them space and hope and pray that they'll come around again. But most oftentimes, people feel terrible really quickly, and they want to change it. They want to fix it. And when you do, and you go through that, that binds the friendship even tighter. Because people understand that if they've made a mistake, they can still come back from that mistake, and that that person forgives them, and then this circle, kind of this circle of mercy and forgiveness occurs, right? Somebody's merciful and forgiving with us, that makes us want to do better the next time. Because we truly love or respect that person. We want to do better the next time. That's how the circle works. Right? It just builds on one another. It just goes around and around. Circle of mercy and forgiveness. It makes us want to do better. Colossians 3. Colossians 3. Most of the time, and this is the way friends and true friendships work, most of the time, you just kind of let it roll, right? Colossians 3, verse 13. It says, forbearing one another and forgiving one another. If any man have a quarrel against any, even as Christ also forgave you, so also do you. And Christ said, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. They don't know what they're doing. They didn't repent. They didn't apologize. We know sometimes our friends do things that kind of, tick us off. Right? But most of the time we can just let it roll. We don't even have to have that conversation, that Matthew 18 conversation. Because we have an understanding. We have this mutual understanding with each other. And we just sort of, it's all right. And just let it roll. Let it roll. Because you know it. They didn't mean it. And you know that it's not going to happen again. Because we've developed that friendship, right? We've gone through the meandering. We've searched carefully. It makes our friendships stronger. People that have been friends for 30, 40, 50, 60 years, a lot of stuff has happened. A lot of stuff has happened. Water under the bridge, they say. Right? That's because they let it roll. And when they don't let it roll, then they address it. And when they address it, it gets solved and they move on. Okay, the fifth area, number 5. Friendships God's way are encouraging. True friends are encouraging. Deuteronomy, the 3rd chapter. Let's go there. Look at a couple examples of encouragement. Deuteronomy 3. Deuteronomy 3 and verse 28. God told Moses, but charge Joshua and encourage him and strengthen him, for he will go over before this people, and he shall cause them to inherit the land which you will see. God talking to Moses just before Moses' death, Israel at the precipice of the promised land. And God says, go and give courage to him. They'd spent a long time together. Joshua was Moses' servant. Spent a long time together. Joshua was faithful. Moses was faithful. They had the right foundation. They'd seen each other in a lot of situations. Joshua was the servant. He was underneath Moses. They likely had a certain friendship, a certain kinship. Deuteronomy 31. Skip to the last portion of the book. Deuteronomy 31, verse 7 and verse 8 says, and Moses called to Joshua and said unto him in the sight of all Israel. And notice this. Moses wasn't afraid to say this in front of everybody. Be strong and of a good courage, for you must go and with this people into the land which the Eternal has sworn to your fathers to give them, and you shall cause them to inherit it. You. And the eternal, He it is that does go before you. He will be with you. He will not fail you, neither forsake you. Fear not, and neither be dismayed. So he fulfilled what God says to do, and go and encourage him. You know, true friends say, hey, don't worry, you got this. You can take them. This will be easy. You can do this. I've seen you do it before. Not a problem. This is yours. You own it. And I've heard a lot of that this week already, right? Especially with water skiing. A lot of screaming it, too. It's great. When you're out on the water, probably really encouraging. Very helpful. Even if you fall. Come on, you got this. You can do it. I know you can. I believe in you. It can make a difficult task at hand seem easier, knowing you have somebody in your corner. Proverbs 29. Proverbs 29. Really important stuff. I mean, encouragement helps us to go beyond what we would naturally think of our minds doing. Because even when we don't believe in ourselves, somebody else thinks we can do it, and they're honest and genuine, and we believe them, and we got a history with them, and we respect them. They're not some crazy person. They're our friends, and they're telling us, and they're encouraging us. So maybe we can do it. Maybe I can. Maybe I just might be able to do that. And next thing you know, sometimes you do. Proverbs 27 and verse 9. Ointment and perfume rejoice the heart. So does the sweetness of a man's friend by hearty counsel. Or, as it says in the ISV, a friend's advice is sweet to the soul. Ointment and perfumes encourage the heart in a similar way. Good advice, good encouragement. We need encouragement in this world. We need encouragement as God's people. We're little. We're small. We're few. And sometimes it's really good to hear encouraging words from people. You know, there's somebody who actually had a nickname. Acts 4. Turn there. You know, sometimes that word fitly spoken, the Bible says like apples of gold and pitchers of silver. It's just perfect. Perfect timing, perfect words, exactly right for the situation. Sometimes a friend can do that. Good friends give encouragement. Acts 4:36. It says, and Joseph, who by the apostles was surnamed Barnabas, which is being interpreted the son of consolation or the son of encouragement, a Levite of the country of Cyprus. Barnabas, a son of encouragement. Acts 11. Go ahead a few chapters. Let's go there. I think we got time for this. Acts 11, verse 20. We'll pick it up there. Acts 11, maybe verse 19. Now they which were scattered abroad upon the persecution that arose about Stephen traveled as far as Phoenicia and Cyprus and Antioch, preaching the word to none but the Jews only. And some of them were men of Cyprus and Cyrene, which, when they were come to Antioch, spoke unto the Grecians, preaching the Lord Jesus. And the hand of the Lord was with them, and a great number believed and turned unto the Lord. Then these tidings, this news of these things, came to the ears of the church, which was in Jerusalem. The headquarters church was in Jerusalem. And they sent forth Barnabas, that he should go as far as Antioch. Who, when he came and had seen the grace of God, what God was doing, was glad, and exhorted them all, that with purpose of heart, that they would cleave unto the Lord. For he was a good man, and full of the Holy Spirit and of faith, and much people was added to the Lord. He was determined, with hearty determination, otherwise. if you look at the translation. With hearty determination, he kept encouraging all of them to remain faithful to the Lord. So they heard this good news, and who did they send? They sent the most encouraging guy they could. That was Barnabas. They sent Barnabas to go out because they knew this guy was so encouraging that he would be the right guy to send it. As the momentum was building, let's say, they sent the guy to take it over the top. That was Barnabas. Can we be that encouraging? Can we be known as somebody that's that encouraging? It's really easy in this world to be negative. It really is. To be picky. Okay, certain types of personalities are more picky than others. I know growing up, that's the way it was in my house, and I know it to some degree. It is that way in my house as well still now. I am a product of it. So I need to continue to work on encouragement myself. The sermon is as much for me as it is for everybody else. But if we can strive to be like that, that would be awesome. Could you imagine if everybody was always encouraging all the time? Yeah, there's a time, right? We talked about that already, correction from a friend. But imagine if there were 90% of the time everything was encouraging. Wouldn't life be happy? Wouldn't we walk around with smiles on our face all the time? Just thinking you could do anything. You'd actually believe I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. All the time. Because you'd be encouraged by everybody. Wouldn't that be something? Number 6. The 6th important trait is loyalty. Loyalty. We'll go back to 1 Samuel. 1 Samuel 20. 1 Samuel 20. None of these things are unfamiliar, new. Things that we've seen and read before. 1 Samuel 20 and verse 1. And David fled from Naioth in Ramah and came and said before Jonathan, "What have I done? What is my iniquity? And what is my sin before your father, that he seeks my life?" You know, at this point, just after Saul had tried to take a spear and pin David to the wall. I'm sure we all remember that. David had to convince Jonathan a little bit. And he said to him, "God forbid, you shall not die. Behold, my father will do nothing either great or small, but he will show it to me. He won't do anything to you unless I know about it. And why should my father hide this thing from me? It is not so. And my dad's not going to do that." And David said, moreover, and said, "Your father certainly knows that I have found grace in your eyes." And he said, "Let not Jonathan know this, lest he be grieved. But truly, as the Eternal lives, and as your soul lives, there is but a step between me and death." David's trying to explain how dire the situation is. Now picture yourself. You're in your friend's house. You're there, you're doing something, waiting maybe for your friend, maybe you're working for your friend's dad. Next thing you know, across the room goes a wrench. Whoa! What happened there? Or a hammer or something like that, And you go and tell your friend, "Hey, your dad's got it out for me." Nah, my dad doesn't have it out for you. "Well, I got a hammer in the wall over here that says he does," And this is the conversation that's going on between David and Jonathan, right? And then Jonathan said, "Okay, I can see it on you, basically, David." And Jonathan said to David, "Whatsoever your soul desires, I'll even do it for you." David and Jonathan were really good friends. They'd made that covenant, remember? They had that mutual respect. They had that love and affection, brotherly love for one another, real brotherly love. And so he could see, okay, David's really serious about this. Maybe there's something to this, and I'm going to believe you. I'm going to believe you, David. I'm loyal to what you're saying. Jonathan trusts what David says, and he commits. And you know the end of the story. They never were able to see each other again. But Jonathan upheld his end of the bargain all the way to the end, knowing that he would never see his friend again. And sometimes that's the case. Being loyal is difficult. Very difficult. Jonathan was loyal to David, not to his dad in this case. He had a certain loyalty to his own dad. He didn't believe it at first. But he had such a friendship with David that he ended up believing it. Proverbs 17. That's the kind of friendships we want to develop. Not that we don't believe our parents. That's not what I'm getting at. Hopefully your parents are trustworthy all the time. And you can believe them all the time. Proverbs 17, verse 17 says, "A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity." So then there's troubles, you have a brother. But it also says, if you just go over a page in Proverbs 18:24, "A man that has friends must show himself friendly." But the last half of the verse says, "And there is a friend that sticks closer than a brother." So sometimes you get a friend that sticks closer than a brother. A friend loves at all times, but a brother is born for adversity, right? Difficult trials, you go to your family, you know your family's there. But sometimes you have a friendship that's closer than a brother, which is even more strength and encouragement and help. Because you have this loyal friend who's also there for the adversity. Who's also there through thick and through thin. And sometimes friendships end up being more closer knit than genetics can ever be. And that's awesome when that happens. And truly, if you think about it, that's the exact way that Jesus Christ and God the Father want the friendship from you and from me to be with them. Point number 7. Point number 7. True friendships, lasting friendships, important friendships, godly friendships, help each other grow and to reach their potential. True friends want to see their best friends reach their potential. 1 Thessalonians, the 5th chapter. First Thessalonians 5 and verse 11. It says, "Wherefore comfort yourselves together and edify one another, even as also you do, as your custom." Build each other up, as is your custom. Make it your custom to build each other up. Building each other up helps us to reach our ultimate goal, that ultimate potential. Back to Proverbs 27. Real friends want to build each other up. Talked about encouragement. Encouragement is a type of building one another up. Friends go above and beyond to help set up a situation where you can reach your goal. Proverbs 27. And verse 17. Sometimes the conversations are difficult. Yeah, we've seen those before, but guess what? Iron sharpens iron. So a man sharpens the countenance of his friend. You have a difficult or a vigorous conversation, it may be. We had a couple of vigorous conversations here at camp. Not difficult, just vigorous. But those are good because both people come away being sharpened. Both people leave the conversation sharper than when they came in. A more useful, a more excellent tool than when they went into that initial conversation. Iron sharpening iron. Or working beside one another. Maybe you have a standard that when you were setting up a certain thing here at camp and somebody else came in and they had a different standard and you went, wow, that's a better standard. So then you step up your game to that standard. And then that standard becomes now your new standard. That person sees, hey, they also did that too. That was kind of neat. So they make that incorporated into what they're doing. And then they say, wow. Next thing you know, they both leave with the same ideas, and they're both sharpened in what they're doing. They're both better for that interaction. And true friends help sharpen each other. Iron sharpening iron. Hebrews 10. They help each other reach ultimate potential, our ultimate potential, our goal. Everybody does have to work out their own salvation with fear and trembling, but boy, is it ever a lot more helpful when you have friends that push you along the way and help you along the way and encourage you along the way. Hebrews 10 and verse 23. It says, let us hold fast the profession of our faith without wavering, for he is faithful that promised. And let us consider one another to provoke unto love and good works. Poke each other every once in a while. Hey, get up. You can do that. I've seen you do that before. Come on. We need it. Okay, I'll do it. How many times have you seen that? How many times have you done that? Not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, as the manner of some is, but exhorting one another, and so much the more as you see the day approaching. Encouraging one another. Pushing one another. Helping each other. Dragging each other along. You've heard that before. You can't drag somebody totally across the finish line, but you can drag them. You can, when they're having trouble, if they're limping, you can drag them. You can pick them up. We can help them. Cannot stress this enough in this age. If we want to have a brotherly love type of attitude, we have to do these things. We have to be these types of friends. It's harder and harder to come by. And we have to cherish it and make the most of the time we have together. Even if the groups are smaller. Even if we have less people to do it with. Take the time to do it. Narrow it down. Some of the meandering or the reconnoitering or the reconnaissance has already been done for us. Malachi 3. Malachi 3. And verse 16. Malachi 3 and verse 16. Then they that feared the Eternal spoke often to one another. And the Eternal hearkened and heard it. And a book of remembrance was written before him for them that feared the Eternal and that thought upon his name. In the modern King James it reads, Then those fearing the Eternal spoke together often, each man to his friend, and the Eternal listened, and a book of remembrance was written. And so on. Friends speaking often to one another. God remembers that. He looks at that. He says He writes a book of remembrance. I want to be in that book. Not only the book of life, but this is another one. Book of remembrance. I'm going to be remembered for doing that. For encouraging. So not all of us may have a lot of friends. Maybe some of us have a lot of friends. Maybe some of us are still trying to figure out how to make friends. So, in conclusion, I want to leave you with 3 small, simple tips in making friends. And those of us who have lots of friends, you can still make more. I call it the SNL of friendship. SNL. First thing, smile. Right? Nobody wants to make friends with somebody who, we all know the Eeyore type. Oh, it's sunny again today. Oh, another perfect day. I'm so happy to be here. Okay, great. Thanks. It's hard to be a friend with somebody like that, right? You want somebody smiling and happy. You can just write down Proverbs 15 and verse 13. It says, "A merry heart makes a cheerful countenance, but by sorrow of the heart the spirit is broken." If you're happy, if you're appreciative, you have a cheery countenance. You look happy. You're smiling. When he was younger, one of my children asked the question, "Why did God give us eyebrows?" I paused, and I was a little bit stumped. But then I found the answer. They enhance your smile. Have you ever seen somebody smile without eyebrows? I have. It's weird. I mean, it's weird. Eyebrows help, enhance and kind of frame in your smile. Right? It's great. Ask yourself, have you ever seen anybody without eyebrows smile? And I'm sure you can find that on some silly Instagram post with 1 million likes. Okay? Everyone smiles in the same language. Mark Twain said, "Wrinkles should merely indicate where smiles have been." A smile is a curve that sets everything straight. Phyllis Diller. People that smile a lot are generally happier. So if you want to make friends, smile. The N. Names are important. Names are important. Remembering a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound in any language. And that's from How to Win Friends and Influence People. Many of you have read the book, Dale Carnegie. In 3 John, let's turn there real quickly. 3 John, it's only one chapter, small book. Last verse says, "But I trust I shall see you shortly see you, and we shall speak face to face. Peace be to you. Our friends salute you." And he ends, "Greet the friends by name." Greet your friends by name. A rule of thumb to remember somebody's name: find a way to repeat their name 3 times in the conversation if you're just meeting them. If you can't remember their name, find a way in that very first conversation where you hear their name to repeat their name 3 times. And you probably will remember that name. You hear yourself out loud saying it 3 times, probably remember it. And the last thing is the L for listen. Don't need to turn there in the Bible. We've already heard it once, but it's pretty simple math. God knows pretty simple math. We have 1 opening here and 2 openings here. Sound goes in, 2 openings, comes out of 1. Listen twice as much as we speak. Listen attentively. Pay attention to the person who, if you said their name 3 times, pay attention to what they have to say. Start to develop that respect by understanding the kinds of things they like to do. Start to take that time to choose your friends wisely. Start to take that time to develop a friendship. Summer camp is a great time for old and young alike. Perhaps a time like no other time in the year. We get 2 weeks. We're with each other all day, every day for 2 full weeks. It's half over. We're working. We're playing. We're eating. Lots of eating. We're serving. Lots of serving. We're overcoming obstacles and challenges together in different situations. This is the perfect time to foster old relationships and to build new ones. I ask you, now that you've heard this message, how prepared to make new friends, to strengthen old friendships, And what kind of friend will you and I determine to be?
For more information, go to our website at cogassembly.org.